Hello, everyone. Welcome and good evening. I'm Michelle Glaze, Director of Professional Outreach for the Foundation Fighting Blindness, global leader in driving retinal degenerative disease research. Welcome to Sight Enthusiast Alliance by the Bay, also known as See by the Bay, our newest foundation forum for blindness. The foundation forums are a virtual platform to bring professionals together in communities all over the United States. And through these forums, we enable different groups and organizations to showcase resources, activities, or different things that might be of interest to the blind and low vision community in the Bay Area, and any small towns and cities surrounding the Bay Area in California. We are going to be kicking off our inaugural meeting tonight by introducing the founding member team, and then we'll be hearing from each of the founding members individually. They'll share a little bit about themselves, the work they do, and then we do have a special presentation this evening as well from Van Duesterberg. We will ask that you hold all questions until the end, and then once all of the presentations are complete, we'll open up for Q&A, general discussion, and we'll even invite those of you joining us tonight as attendees to introduce yourself and share any information that may be pertinent or of interest to this group. We do encourage you to invite others who might have an interest in joining us for future meetings to join. These are going to be hosted quarterly. They are virtual for the most part. We may have an in-person meeting down the road, but here in the first few, they will always be virtual, and they are recorded. So we're recording this session. We do have a See by the Bay page where you can view the recordings. You can find a list of the professionals affiliated with this group and resources in the local community. To visit the page, you will go to fightingblindness.org. You're going to select the For Eye Care Professionals tab, and then you will find Foundation Forums for Blindness and Sight Enthusiast Alliance by the Bay. So just to kick things off, I'm going to just very quickly introduce our founding member team, and then I'm going to introduce each individually to share a little bit. So the team that came together to pull this forum, put this forum into action, includes Dr. Cesar Luo, Bay Area Retina, Neeraj Gupta with Vista Center for the Blind, and Patricia Wolverton, one of our community members, alongside myself and Chelsea War, who is our professional outreach director. Professional outreach coordinator. Excuse me, Chelsea. Chelsea, do you want to say hello before we get started with presentations?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. We're super excited to have y'all join us for the first See by the Bay Forum. Thank you guys so much for being on the call tonight. I hope that you guys enjoy the forum, and we will have a Q&A session immediately following the presentation. So please be sure to save your questions until then. But again, thank you all so much for joining us. And it's a pleasure to meet everyone on the call tonight.
Thanks, Chelsea. A special thank you to Chelsea for organizing this meeting and getting the invitations out. And before we get started, I want to thank our founding members for your dedication to this forum, to the Foundation Fighting Blindness, to your community of individuals with vision loss or blindness, and the work that you do, through the organizations and such that you serve. We do appreciate your involvement. We appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to hearing from you tonight. So without further ado, I am going to turn the spotlight over to Patricia Wolverton. Patty, if you want to come off mute, I'd love to hear a little bit about you and how you got connected with the Foundation Fighting Blindness in this forum.
Thank you. I would love to. As Michelle said, I'm Patricia Wolverton. I currently live in Santa Rosa, California, which is a little north of San Francisco and a lot west. I've been here for about 5 years, and I've traded in the hubbub and headaches of owning my own aesthetic practice to having my coffee in the morning without being interrupted. My story starts with my son. He has RP, and it's a journey that he started when he was about 10 years old. I want to tell you just a snip about this, and then you will understand where I'm coming from and where my motivation is and how I am helping and how I delve into FFB. Just he was 10 years old. We went to the eye doc. He had started wearing glasses at 5 and they couldn't get him to 2020. So they were concerned there was a brain tumor. I was like, within the tests were ordered and diagnosis came RP. You have RP. So the doc told me, well, your son will never be a airline pilot or a professional baseball player. And I'm like, well, fine. He doesn't even like those things anyways. So, okay, we'll move on. And he said, well, come back in 6 years and we'll check it, maybe see what happens there. Little did I know what this journey was going to hold. Much, much more than that. Flash forward to Tony getting hit, renewing his license. He was able to get it at 16, and he was probably about 19 at the time. There was a question on the test that said, do you have any eye condition that interferes with driving? He called me and he said, Mom, I got to be honest about this. And I said, can't you lie? Oh, Mother of the Year award here. And he said, no. And I said, okay, well then let's just do day driving like an old person. Nope, the answer was still the same. He insisted, I can't do this. That is when I knew our lives had changed forever. We were into something far more than I would ever know with RP, the journey with RP. And then also it made sense. All the things I'd seen growing up with him from 10 to about that 20 years, it's like, oh, that's why he couldn't see. That is my motivation. I was so frustrated with the introduction and there was nowhere to go at the time. So previous to Santa Rosa, I lived in Arizona for about 15 years. That's where I got to meet Michelle. I was able to volunteer quite a bit for FFB and got quite involved in that chapter. I had the honor and privilege of meeting Michelle and getting to know her and experience how she led all the teams and all the chapters throughout the whole USA. We were very happy to have her. That I volunteered there and would get involved into the different, like public races or walks and stuff like that we did. My son, back to him, Tony, just last year, had a short stint in Palo Alto, California. And so I thought he was going to live here permanently, but nope, he didn't. But during that time, I was jumping into what services are available and that sort of thing. So got a little bit of knowledge briefly into the Bay Area resources. I am privileged to be here, honored to be asked. And so hopefully I can add in some good input. But my bottom line is I want to be able to bring hope to other families in providing these resources and places that they can go to find answers for all this stuff that hits you once you're diagnosed at first with a retinal disease.
Patty, thank you so much. And Patty is humble. When she was helping in Phoenix with the chapter and professional outreach and all of the things, Vision Walk, she was a rock star. I mean, and still is. But she has done a lot to support the Foundation Fighting Blindness, and all motivated by Tony. So we appreciate you, Patty. And
Thank you.
Patty mentioned hope. Part of the reason that we're doing these forums is to provide hope, to provide knowledge, and to provide community to individuals and families as they go through their personal journeys with vision loss. So Patty, thank you so much. Unfortunately, many patients with retinitis pigmentosa do experience similar scenarios. They get diagnosed with an inherited retinal condition like retinitis pigmentosa, and they're told there's really nothing that we can do for you, come back in a few years. And as hopefully all of you on this call know, that is definitely not the case. So I'm always grateful to be able to refer individuals like myself, I have RP myself, to physicians who see a holistic approach and utilize and leverage a holistic approach to care for their patients with these conditions. And I'm delighted to share that Dr. Cesar Luo of Bay Area Retina is right in your backyard, and he completely understands the value of a holistic approach. So Dr. Luo, I'm going to ask you to come into the spotlight and turn things over to you.
That's so kind, Michelle. Thank you so much for that introduction. Somehow you never age, Michelle. I don't understand. We've known each other for years and you've always looked the same. It is an incredible skill that you have. It's an absolute honor to be on this call with you guys. And for our inaugural meeting for See by the Bay, I think Patty, that was a very impressive presentation. Very well done. I feel like I should have had some cue cards as well. So, beautifully done for sure. So I was first involved with the foundation because I had a very different view of inherited retinal dystrophy and low vision specifically than I think many of my colleagues. I think as physicians, we are very good at fixing stuff. But then when we can't fix stuff, all of a sudden we become very bad at it. And I think inherited retinal dystrophies and low vision is a very good example of that. I think we tend to try and just wash our hands of it and move on and say, let's do other things that we can actually fix. And I found that that was a real problem for our patients and honestly for us as the physician community. I first became really passionate about the low vision community when I had a patient with advanced geographic atrophy and macular degeneration. It was an elderly couple, and I had just started, so this was probably 12 years ago, and they said, when I gave them the diagnosis, and I said, at that time we really didn't have much for you. But there are some low vision services that we can get you in to see, and there's some great resources in the area. Well, he said, well, I don't really need that. I've tried everything. I've tried magnifiers, I've tried lighted magnifying stands, I've tried all the stuff, but I just need someone to talk to. I don't have anyone that I can just share my experiences with. I would love to have someone who understands what I'm going through and maybe we can share our experiences together. And sure enough, I asked around and he was absolutely right. At the time, there was really nothing available for the social aspect of low vision. And I thought that's really a crime. And because it's so simple to just try and get people together, right? And it's an incredibly powerful thing. We all learn little bits. And if we can fuse all of that combined knowledge, we all do better. And so I formed a low vision group and just purely out of a support group in Rossmore, the retirement community out here in the Bay Area. They are located kind of in the East Bay. And because to be honest with you, even now, we don't really have a great low vision center. Like Neeraj is part of Vista, there's the Lighthouse Center. Here in the East Bay, we're really limited. We have the Lion Center out in Pittsburgh, which is an incredible resource, but it's such a large geographic catchment area without any available services. And so we've started this probably, gosh, 8, 10 years ago now. And it started as something that we met weekly just to kind of sit around and chat. And it has grown into a massive group. I spoke a few months back, and I think they had 150 people that came in from all around the area with all sorts of different kinds of low vision questions. It wasn't just retina, it was glaucoma, it was inherited retinal dystrophies, it was everything. And it just keeps growing because people need to hear about their condition and how they can join others that have that. And so that really spiraled into looking at as Michelle said, the more holistic approach to low vision inherited retinal dystrophy. And that's how I first got associated with the foundation. It was more of a way to sort of figure out a way that we could connect all the dots that were out there. And even when I first started here in the practice with Bay Area Retina Associates, I should probably talk about that a little bit. Sorry. So I'm one of the partners with Bay Area Retina Associates. We have now 10 offices all through the East Bay, from Vacaville all the way down to Fremont. So we have a really large area. Um, we have 8 doctors. All are surgical retina trained docs, and so we all have varying interests inherent in retinal dystrophies. But it's something that we, as a practice, really started to grow through the years. So when we started, we were just like the other eye care professionals out there. It was a bit of a black box. I say this, it's about visibility and access, right? You have to be able to let the people out there know that we have services available for them, and then you have to get them in and accessible to the sort of next steps for their care. And so, but back when I started, we really didn't have much available. We were very much like Patty's experience. We would say, yeah, you have RP, you have Stargardt's, and we didn't even have genetic testing. We would say, you know what, you look like you have this congenital disease. But if you wanted to get testing, I'd have to send you up to University of Washington. At the time, there's a wonderful doc at UCSF named Jackie Duncan, who is now who's one of the leaders in our field when it comes to inherited retinal dystrophies. But she wasn't even here yet, so at the time we didn't really have a lot of resources for it. But it's been something that has really grown, really, because of what Foundation Fighting Blindness has been able to provide for both patients and to practitioners. I think, again, it's important from the patient standpoint, but I think as physicians, we're just as kind of nervous about being able to provide the right services for our patients. And the foundation has done that. And I think, initially with blueprint genetics and now with prevention genetics, that is an incredible resource for us to be able to give patients diagnosis. And when it comes to hope, that is such an incredible thing, because we are entering a phase of medicine that we've never been in before. We actually now have the first FDA-approved treatment for a condition for retinitis pigmentosa, specifically this RPE65 mutation. It's a medication called Luxturna, and it's now spiraling with the ability for us to be able to have more clinical research that is effective for patients that that, again, did not have anything out there before. Um, and so the way that I kind of think about and sort of frame this is using the resources the foundation has, saying, okay, we have this service available. Please come to see us. When you come in, we really wanted to streamline that process for our patients. We didn't want it to be difficult for them or for us as a practice. And so when they come in, we do their genetic testing on the spot. And so we have available prevention genetics kits in every single office. They get tested right there. We tell them that, to expect kind of a timeline. It'll be a few months. And then the practitioner will call you. We have them also enroll in My Retina Tracker. My Retina Tracker is, as you know, this de-identified patient registry that is crucial for identifying patients and getting them into clinical trials, as well as just in the database, so that we have a good sense of where these patients are. And then also being able to give them access to informed DNA, which, as you guys know, is this genetics. They're basically counselors that are experts in this. They're even better, honestly, than we are in family planning and being able to guide patients kind of for those next steps. So that's kind of like the first step, getting them tested. And then the next step is, again, what we can do, right? And so that it's that sort of hope piece. And I think of it not just in terms of like a clinical trial that they might be in, but it's the low vision services, which I'm really excited to hear about from Neeraj too, kind of how we can maximize the vision that you do have now, and then kind of what to expect in the years coming down the pipeline. So that's kind of like the sort of the next part of the Venn diagram. And then the last piece of it, again, is how I started this whole journey in the first place, which is the emotional side of it. And that's really oftentimes overlooked by all of us. We are so good with saying, this is what we can try. This is what we'll do. I'll get you in a trial. And then we want to be able to offer them that sort of next step. Like, where do I go from here? How do I, and honestly, when I'm depressed, when I don't want to get out of bed, what are the sort of next things that we can do? And giving back, the woman who now runs the support group in Rossmore, she has she's has a long-standing inherited retinal dystrophy as well, but she was able to she worked in social work and counseling, and she now runs this very, very large meeting with us, and she's incredible. So, you know, some folks just want to also give back, right? It's not just oh, poor me, what can people offer me, but it's also what can I do now that I have this diagnosis and I've lived with it for so many years? What can I now do to give back to this community? So it's this kind of full circle approach that I hope this forum will continue to foster, and using these shared experiences that we all have to make us all to going to help all of us that are out there. So again, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this, and I'm really looking forward to learning from all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luo. That was just such a great summary of what it truly means to approach care for individuals with an inherited retinal disease through a holistic approach model. And I think that I love how you highlighted the medical piece, including care from an eye care professional or provider, along with genetic testing and the no-cost genetic testing and genetic counseling option through the foundation. Thank you for sharing that. The community piece, right, through organizations that support the blind and low vision community, like the Foundation Fighting Blindness, but there are many others, which you mentioned. And then the low vision and low vision rehabilitation or resource sector, which is where the Vista Center for the Blind kind of falls. So I'd like to invite Neeraj Gupta to take the spotlight and tell us a little bit about the work you do and the resources offered through the Vista Center.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Dr. Luo and Chelsea and Patty. So my name is Neeraj Gupta. I'm the Associate Director of Corporate and Community Relations at the Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I thought to start off today by kind of giving you my journey with vision loss, and then kind of give you an overview of what we do at Vista Center and how we serve the blind and low vision community. So Patty, I can completely relate to what your son Tony went through and is going through. I also have RP, retinitis pigmentosa. So my journey kind of started back in I'm in my early 40s and my early 20s. That's when I was diagnosed with RP. And so, I was in college. It was difficult at first to see at night, and that's when I kind of stopped driving at night. So I can completely relate to Tony and just doing daytime driving. And then in my mid 20s, the lanes were getting blurry, so I stopped driving during the daytime. That's when I started to adapt by using paratransits and public transportation, that type of sort of thing. I was in my early 30s. I went back. I wanted to get my graduate degree. I did my MBA. And then things were starting to get kind of like a little bit difficult to see. So I started adapting by just various different tools that were available at that time, whether it be, just reading through PDF readers or asking friends to read the board for me, that type of thing. So I worked for about maybe 10 years in the corporate world. I was in operations and finance. And when I lost a lot of the vision, that's when I was thinking, how am I going to still work? So that's when I became a client at Vista Center, which I'll segue into in a minute. But really at that time it was very challenging. Like anybody with RP or any diagnosis of any sort would say, it's challenging at first to think, how are you going to adapt? In my case, how am I still going to be able to work? How am I going to get to work? How am I going to meet my friends and family, do anything recreational, anything of that nature? So I was very fortunate to find Vista Center. We're a nonprofit. We're headquartered here in Palo Alto, and we have branches in San Jose and Santa Cruz as well. So I became a client first, and before I get more into what Vista Center does, I became a client, learned a lot of the skills I use now, and that's how I'm able to even join this meeting, because I learned a lot of the technology, how to adapt, and how to kind of cope with my own vision loss. And so once I became a client, that I did a complete career change. I'm on leadership now, and I work with a lot of companies to make sure that their products are accessible to the blind and low vision community. And then, of course, joining forums like this, thanks to Michelle and FFB and Chelsea and everybody. So thank you for putting this together. So to give you more about Vista Center, We were founded back in 1936, so we're about 90 years old. And like I mentioned, we're headquartered in Palo Alto. We have branches in San Jose and Santa Cruz. So we serve primarily the South Bay. The North Bay is primarily from the Lighthouse. And Dr. Liu, I know you had mentioned the East Bay. That's kind of like, we try to cover it if we're able to cover those areas or the Lighthouse. So we'll, always try to do our best to cover as many people as we can. So as a whole, we serve about 3,700 clients per year, blind and low vision, including myself. So our main mission statement is that there's no barrier when it comes to vision loss. So as why I kind of gave my story, and I'm sure Tony can relate to through Patty's son, is, as we go through any vision loss, and of course Michelle too, as we go through any vision loss, we're trying to figure out how to adapt, how to cope with it, how do we get through it. So that's why we always say our barriers, there's no barrier when it comes to vision loss. Vista Center as a whole, you can think about it this way. It's like everybody's saying, it's a very holistic approach, or we've recently been calling it the whole person model. So in this case, to make it easier to explain what Vista Center does, think about it as a triangle. There's like three main parts of the triangle. There's the medical piece, there's the emotional piece, and then there's the practical piece. So let's start with the medical piece. We have low vision clinics in each of our branches, Palo Alto, San Jose, and Santa Cruz. And as Dr. Luo, kind of alluded to, basically, let's just say anybody with vision loss goes to their optometrist and they realize, oh, wow, glasses can no longer correct my vision, which is in my case, this is what happened. I was referred to then my ophthalmologist, who then diagnosed me with RP. And of course, there's various levels of vision loss. There's RP, retinitis pigmentosa, macular degeneration, glaucoma, cataracts, you name it, Stargardt's, all these different types of vision loss. So when you go to an ophthalmologist and at that time they said glasses no longer could correct it, let me refer you to Vista Center. And so they referred me to the low vision clinic at Vista Center. And the appointments are about an hour and a half each, very personalized, very comfortable. And the doctors here at Vista Center kind of helped me realize, okay, well, let's try to maximize your functional vision. And I know Dr. Liu, you have referred to that too. It's like, how can we at least maximize what vision you have? So in my case, I got the chance to see, okay, high contrast colors are better. Most of you might see, I believe, black text on white backgrounds. I'm the opposite. It's a little bit better to see the other way. But now I'm at a point where I can see text anyways, and nor can I see the screen in front of me, but that's separate. I even learned basic little things like wearing a hat. When I'm outside, I wear a hat not only to protect me from the sun, but from the glare, but it also helps me, like when there's low-hanging branches that come on the sidewalk. So many times my hat has hit the branch and it actually makes me stop and it protected my face. So there's like little things like that we learn as we go. And of course, the low vision clinic helps others to figure out, oh, do we need any magnifiers or other tools or CCTVs that can help? Basically, it's kind of an introductory point with vision loss as to what kind of tools are still out there that a low vision clinic can meet with our clients with. So that's kind of like the medical piece of Vista Center. And then, of course, when we partner with FFB and Dr. Liu, you had mentioned My Retina Trackers, all things I'm part of, we also advocate for those things to be part of these, medical piece literature so we can learn what's going on out there. So that's the medical piece. Now, from the emotional piece, which is the second part of the triangle, let's say you're a client and you first, like I said, an ophthalmologist will refer the client to Vista Center. Then the client gets the chance to say, okay, they meet with a social worker. The social worker will go to each person's home and kind of figure out doing an intake, or they'll meet at Vista Center, either whatever's comfortable for the client. And what happens there is then the social worker can understand what is it the client needs help with. Do they need to partake in any of our programs or services? Are they having issues understanding how their home is laid out, safety, what kind of daily living skills do they need to learn? And then also our social workers will get a chance to kind of teach our the new clients as to what we offer. For example, we have programs in sewing, ceramics, Tai Chi, yoga. Our youth get to go on an annual kayaking trip. So we serve anywhere from ages 3 to 103. And we have quite a wide range, but the coolest parts, one I really like, is the kayaking. I've never done it myself, but I always hear the youth group going on these annual kayaking trips. So that's just one aspect of it. Of course, we have social support groups and peer groups. We have book clubs. We have all different aspects that the client can partake in. And then we have a volunteer program. We have about, I would say, about 200 volunteers in our database. And if clients need help with reading their mail, organizing papers, or running essential errands, or just even companionship, like Dr. Liu had mentioned, just socialization, that's what Vista Center volunteers can offer. And we get the clients signed up through our volunteer program. So that's kind of like the emotional side. So you got the medical piece of the triangle, the emotional piece, and then you got the practical piece. So with the practical piece is more so, okay, now we've identified, yes, there is some sort of vision loss. And now how can we help you adapt on a daily basis? So let's just start with O&M, it's called orientation and mobility. We teach white cane, so how to navigate the street. So in my case, I got an O&M orientation and mobility instructor came to my home, and they taught me how to navigate just safely in my own neighborhood, how I could cross the street, how I could get to the coffee shop. And believe it or not, I am so much more confident now having that white cane than I used to. Otherwise, I would just be at home all day. And I'm married and my wife is sighted, and I go out with her all the time. But if I had to travel on my own, it was daunting. It was scary. It was challenging. And so having that orientation and mobility specialist come to my home and teach me with O&M, my O&M skills with my white cane was crucial. Other practical skills could include technology. So that's actually one of my favorite topics. Is there's all sorts of technology that we teach. We have assistive technology specialists, and they can meet with our clients one-on-one and figure out what is it that they need help with. Do they need help learning how to use voiceover on their phone or screen reader where everything on your computer talks back to you? So for those who are not familiar with it, basically we can now close our eyes completely without any mouse and just use all keyboard commands on the computer, and everything talks back to me. I'm able to work even more efficiently than when I have sighted support. So many times my eyes are closed and I'm just kind of pounding it through, but I'm thinking, oh, my boss think I'm sleeping or what's going on? So it's really cool, all this assistive technology that's out there. A large part of what we do at Vista Center, we have a Site Tech Global Conference. It's a virtual tech conference, free to join. It's virtual. It's in the December, and we did it, I think, our 6th year this past December. So what's kind of cool about that, if anybody wants to check it out, Site Tech Global, SIGHT techglobal.com, you can see kind of what companies are doing at the latest in accessibility. And then we have other platforms similar to that throughout the months. We have a section called Tech It Out, where we have companies kind of showcase, again, virtually, where we meet and kind of let our clients know what is out there. So, and then I read a lot of the user studies. Recently, we worked with like Amazon, just as an example, just to make sure that their Alexa products are accessible for our blind and low vision community. So technology is pretty cool. I really enjoy it. I think my favorite story was when I started to use a couple of the apps like Be My Eyes, and even through the Meta glasses, I was able to find the remote control in my own family room for the first time. And it told me exactly where it was. It's on the couch. I took a picture of the room. It didn't talk back to me, told me where the remote control is on the couch. So it was kind of cool. So yeah, that's kind of Vista Center in a whole. Again, our mission statement being that there's no barrier when it comes to vision loss. And when you think of the triangle approach or the whole person model, you got the medical piece, emotional piece, and practical piece. And then, of course, being a nonprofit, we're constantly fundraising, whether it be through grants, donations, these fundraising events we put together, because we never refuse service to anyone, even if they can't pay. So we want to make sure we're always keeping the business running, and of course, providing for our programs and services. So thank you for having me today.
Neeraj, thank you so much. I have to admit, I've been sitting here, nodding my head, yes, 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 because so many of the things that you highlighted. I mean, I always wear a hat and glasses when I go for a walk because of those low-hanging branches and things that I run into on occasion. And the meta glasses, I've experienced that kind of nuance of being able to actually, quote, see what's in front of you. My birthday last year, my mom handed me this bag with gifts, and she usually opens them one by one. And I was like, no, let me put on my meta glasses. And I was able to enjoy seeing, sort of, right, my gifts as I unfolded them and unwrapped them. So the technologies, the resources, so important. And I too am a Fusion JAWS user, so the assistive technology through the computer is so helpful. I think that's a really good reminder that vision loss is a journey, right? And what you need at the beginning when you're diagnosed is oftentimes not what you need as the vision loss progresses. And there are a number of resources. We're so fortunate to have centers like Vista Center for the Blind and many others for those resources and training and information so that we can leverage and utilize all of those devices and technologies and skills. So thank you for sharing both your personal story and to the work that you are all doing. So that is another good segue. I love the way that things are flowing this evening to our next presenter. So Van Duesterberg is going to share a little bit about herself, and she's kind of tied to all of these different pieces. She's part of our community. She's been a huge supporter of the Foundation Fighting Blindness through the Bay Area chapter and strategic council and professional outreach. She's tied to the research and the medical side, amongst other things. So I don't want to steal your thunder, Van, but I'd like to invite you to the stage here and turn the microphone over to you.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Chelsea. Oh my God, this has been overwhelmingly amazing to hear everyone's story, and very grateful to be here to listen in and also get a glimpse of of my story and how that could be very similar to everyone's here. So very similar to you, Neeraj, like was diagnosed when in my early 20s. I'm also in my early 40s now. And it was actually in the middle of grad school, and I couldn't pick like I don't know, the worst profession at the time, not knowing what was happening, because I knew I couldn't see very well at night, like couldn't see stars. It was very subtle. But I was still able to drive at night, and my ophthalmologist told me I had RP. And so today I don't want to drive during the day, just because I don't want to accidentally hit somebody. That's sort of my position in the driving space right now. So like one of the concerns that I try to address on my day to day is like mobility, getting around, getting enough confidence to go around without my sight. I think that's the emotional aspect that I'm still struggling with. But but in grad school, it was barely present for me, except like not being able to see stars. But I kind of took this opportunity as a grad student working on my PhD towards building, high resolution microscopes, ironically, and transitioned to developing technologies that are agnostic to the type of genes that might be afflicting your low vision. And so I was, Daniel Palenker was at Stanford, and I reached out to him, and he was creating the Argus classes at the time. And there was like a lot of folks like Stephen Hicks on Oxford. Like I reached out to all these folks who are developing augmented reality glasses, kind of what meta glasses are here today, but more on the vision side and not just like, articulating things back to you. And it was during a time when 23andMe just came out. There was no commercially available, even medically available genetic testing for folks. And I was struggling. I was like, how do I know what kind of disease do I have? How can I study it, understand it, and actually, create technology to solve it, whatever solving meant at the time. And so I actually started a company to collect blood work data and aggregating genetic data to get people a sense like what is their ailment, like which direction should they be going with, like connecting them with specialists rather than going through this arduous journey of like go to an optometrist and they don't know anything about low vision, and then just having them say, oh, just come back, maybe close your eyes a little bit longer, you'll adapt to the dark. So I was trying to create a service that was a little bit more concierge, now like One Medical type thing, but for folks with rare diseases in general, so that we can expedite the process a little bit better, as well as supporting them. And then I left industry because I wanted to discover sort of my own personal ailment a little bit deeper. And I had a friend who had a doctor up in Oregon at OHSU to that said like, yeah, he you can talk to him and see if he can help you out. Not knowing that Dr. Duncan was like in my backyard. I lived like 5 blocks away from Parnassus. I had no idea, right? And so he kind of I approached him. He was a friend. It was Paul Yang, and like he diagnosed me, and he was like, "Hey, there's genetic testing now." So learned, that's how I learned about the FFB about probably like right before the pandemic in 2018. So like not too far off, but that's when I finally got my diagnosis, my prognosis, and then like found out there was pro EYS finally, like that was my gene that I identified. And I was enrolled into the natural history clinical trial here at UCSF with Dr. Duncan, obviously. And I got so excited. I was like, finally, I'm getting answers. And I was like, how can I help you? I build optics. I can help analyze the data. Like I was a scientist, so I wanted to help her out. And she was like, we're just like collecting data now. Don't worry. Like get involved with the FFB to see what, where it takes you, see where you can help. I actually went down this rabbit hole of trying to understand EYS better. And, it was discovered back in 2006, and there was not a lot of models available for EYS specifically because EYS doesn't express in rodents, which is very uncommon for it's very interesting evolutionary wise to study a disease that doesn't exist in a mammal that's really common to use in scientific study. So then they study mostly EYS mostly in fish and zebrafish, but it's hard to translate point mutations or any mutations in zebrafish to humans and expect like this huge gene to be edited at every single point or replace. It's just way too big for you to completely replace a gene compared to what Luxturna did for the other gene. And so at this point, we're steering towards, gene editing and all that stuff. But I needed to find someone to help me do this research. And I reached out to Dr. Lamba, who was at UCSF at the time, working with Dr. Duncan. And him and I wrote a grant together for me for 2 years to create stem cells for myself. And so I can actually study the mechanism, understand the mutation, and see if gene editing would be a good approach for this particular disease. And granted, like I'm not a cellular biologist by any means, but I knew a little bit of cell biology, and most of my background was high resolution microscopy. So we were able to identify and model the first retinal organoid using my own stem cells, using EYS, and see differences, morphological differences at that stage. And if you can imagine like retinal organoids, they're tiny. It took us about 120 days to see differences. And usually that's embryonic if you compare that to an embryo. So if you have late onset RP, is retinal organoids even a potential candidate to model your disease at all? Like if I'm an adult and that's when I start seeing the disease, how come, will I see physical changes at early stages in life, essentially? And we saw some early stages of differences. And the next step is once we would model the disease, we would start looking at different therapeutic drugs that exist in the market and directly put it on my own retinal organoids. So that's the next phase of the grant. But right now, that's kind of the science venture of my life where I kind of took it on my own and really like from experiences of helping other folks in the rare disease place and navigating that and like modeling the disease and finding treatment, I took it on myself to do that for my retinal disease specifically. And as of now, like the journey, at least for me, has steered me in another direction because my vision has gotten worse in a way that I can't even see the cells growing in the plate anymore. And so I'm training my intern to help me navigate that. And, she's my eyes and my hands for the moment while I try to advocate and share the story and even collaborate with biotech companies to identify other therapeutic approaches for my specific disease. So yeah, and like FFB has been kind of pivotal in my involvement. My involvement is mostly on the science side, but like that's where I feel comfortable in. So thanks.
Dan, thank you so much. That is, I think most people in our world do not have the opportunity to study their own cells. So it's just really awesome to hear. And, that really underscores there's a lot of work being done in the field, right? And the Foundation Fighting Blindness is funding a lot of research to try to find treatments and cures for blinding retinal diseases, inherited retinal conditions, dry age-related macular degeneration. So, Van, it was interesting to hear you share a bit about the work you're doing. Those on the call, if you want to hear other work that's underway in terms of clinical research and clinical trials, if you go to fightingblindness.org, there's a whole section on research and a clinical trial pipeline. The research is very rich right now. There are about 50 clinical trials underway in the IRD and dry AMD space. A multitude of different therapeutic modalities are being investigated. Van mentioned cell-based therapies. There are gene replacement therapies, neuroprotective strategies to slow or stop progression of disease, optogenetics using other cells in the retina that aren't typically light sensitive in order to try to restore some vision, and a lot of other things that are being researched and investigated. So if you're interested in the research, the Foundation Fighting Blindness website is a good spot to learn about all that's going on in the field. Just a shameless plug, our professional outreach team is also going to be hosting a webinar on March 24th focused on cell-based therapies, regenerative medicine. So we'll be sharing information about that here soon. So keep, pun intended, keep an eye out if that's something that may be of interest. So I want to thank all of our presenters tonight. I want to thank our founding member team, and I want to go ahead and open up for any questions that people may have. Chelsea, I'm going to ask you to come back in and assist with any questions that may be in the chat or hands raised, please.
Absolutely. We currently do not have any questions in the chat, and I do not see any hands raised at this moment.
Okay. I'll pause for just a moment. Should anyone want to come off mute and ask any questions?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Nasif Zaman. I'm a postdoc at Smith Kettlewell Eye Research Institute. It's in San Francisco. I'm familiar with Vista Center and their work. I wasn't that familiar with fighting blindness and their Bay Area chapter. I'm wondering, because we also do eye research, and we also have a support group that takes place every month with low vision uh, 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 folks coming in. And I was wondering, is there a mechanism, a way that we can be a part of the chapter to raise awareness or talk with everyone?
Absolutely. What I would ask is, Chelsea, perhaps you can put our email address in the chat. I think that what would be best is to connect over email, and then we can make some introductions and get you connected at a local level there.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Appreciate you hopping on, and thank you for your interest and the question. I'd be happy to do that. Van, I don't know if you have anything to add, or Dr. Luo even, our founding member team, those of you that are connected with the Bay Area chapter, if anybody has
I have a
anything else to add.
question, if that's okay. Is this Karen Elam? Can I ask a question of Van?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great. Van, I was just curious, when I met with Dr. Duncan, she was talking that the science might be going in finding therapies by category, so similar, gene mutations that might be similar to one another. Are you aware if your EYS is similar to other genes, and so your research would be beneficial to others?
Yeah, it's actually really closely. The mechanism is very similar to Usher
Okay.
Usher syndrome, but it doesn't work the same way. And in fact, like even different mutations on the gene expresses the phenotype very differently amongst individuals. It's very fascinating to see how it changed because USH2A, I think you have both vision loss and loss of hearing. And in most cases, RP with EYS used mostly vision loss, although in like other mammal studies, you have both. So it's EYS is very, very complicated. Yeah, but it is a huge gene. The protein itself is 3,000 amino acids. It's like not a gene replacement. It's not eligible for gene replacement for what we currently have today. But in terms of like parallel sharing resources, I'm always under the, like modeling diseases using stem cells and like making retinal organoids is actually one of the best ways to do that. It's just very arduous. And for me, I'm a more roboticist type of person. So trying to find mechanisms or ways to automate that process so we can have more patients studied in the process, right? And see parallels. And I think Astra is like way further along in research than it is for EYS, just because like EYS does not exist in like rodents, mammals in general. Like they exist in macaques, which are really hard to get. So, like that gets a little bit challenging. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Good question, Karen. Any
And
other?
this is Chelsea. We had a couple of comments in the chat from Kristen. And she stated that she wanted to let us know that UC Berkeley School of Optometry has a variety of specialty clinics like infant, toddler, special visual assessment of children and low vision services. She included a link. And we also have another comment from Kate, and she said the Smith Hillwell Eye Research Institute support group meets every third Wednesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. The next support group is going to be focused on accessibility tools and smartphones. So I'll also be sure to share those links and that information in the email that will be sent out and on our professional resources page that Michelle mentioned at the beginning of the call as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chelsea. And that's a good mention. Everything from this evening, the recording, all the professional contacts and resources, and the information that's being shared through the chat will be sent out via email with the recording of this session to everyone that is here tonight and that was invited. So, if you know others in the professional community that may be interested in participating in this call next quarter, which will be in, let's see, it's February, it'll be in May. Thank you. Please feel free to share, that information and get folks connected with us so that we can share the calendar invitation.
And sorry to interrupt, Michelle. Kate has her hand raised.
Kate, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing the link. I'm Kate. I'm also a researcher at the Smith Kettlewell. I had a question because there's a lot of interest in developing therapies. There's a lot of research, lots of clinical trials, as you mentioned. I was wondering if you had advice for potential funding sources for research that is more on rehabilitation or on understanding how we can help people with what they have right now, rather than in the cellular or molecular work. I know, for example, I study macular degeneration, and I found that with foundations, my work is not often interesting, or it's not considered sexy or relevant enough because it's not offering it's not offering a cure or a therapeutic outcome, but more of a, understanding what mobility or navigation limitations we might have, and so dealing with more assistance and rehab.
Yeah, good. That's a really good question. Because the Foundation Fighting Blindness is so research focused, with our mission being to find treatments and cures for IRDs and AMD, all of the funding sources that I'm familiar with and any grants or awards that are offered through the foundation are, for the most part, specific to research and clinical trials to find treatments and cures. Off the top of my head, I am not familiar, I guess just because it's out of our scope.
Okay.
I'd be happy to, to chat with you further and brainstorm a bit. There may be some, some companies, corporations, industry that could do some sort of funding, but I don't know off the top of my head who those might be. But I'm happy to have a conversation, and certainly if anybody else on the call has any ideas about that, Neeraj, perhaps being that you're in the low vision rehabilitation space, please feel free to chime in here.
Sure. No,
Appreciate
I
it.
was
Thank
thinking
you.
about that too. I mean, even at Vista Center, we're constantly trying to fundraise anything for our programs and services, and we work with companies similar to what Michelle just said. But I think to your point, it all depends. Like like, either we do fundraising events, grants, or donations. But that's for a typical nonprofit. But in your case, for the research, I too will have to brainstorm, and if I do come up with anything, I'll let this forum know for sure.
I've heard of Google offering, some sort of grants and financial support for different types of nonprofits, but I don't know the scope of that. Certainly there are a number of biotechs and pharmaceutical companies that have different grant channels, and they may have some subsidiaries that would be more focused in the rehabilitation space.
So, Kate, is your research like identifying the challenges of folks with low vision and exactly finding the right parameters to measure that?
So sort of it's for example in the case of macular degeneration, or to be honest, I look at different it could be Stargardt's, basically central field loss. So we know that they have mobility challenges, but we don't really know what it's due to. I mean, because you have a lot of adaptations that come with this, and I study movement and I study sensory integration, and so that is there's very little known in low vision, and especially in central field loss. So on the one hand, it's understanding where challenges are coming from and also seeing what kind of interventions could work. So for example, if I do an experiment where I modify a parameter of I don't know, of a movement task or of a visual information, is that gonna, for example, reduce is it gonna increase people's stability, for example? And if we see that yes, then that could be optimized through rehab. Or, for example, when the visual search is a big problem as well in macular degeneration, that has big implications for rehabilitation space as well. And so what I do is more translational. So I'm between basic science and rehabilitation. But I'm also wondering about people who are more closer to the applied side.
Yeah, maybe we can get each other's email just because like I know like folks in the FDA and other biotech companies, this was the biggest challenge with approving Luxturna was like, what was the mobility assessment, right? To evaluate success. And that is kind of the biggest pain point for everyone. And I feel like that that will be good to have a standard that isn't comparable to a mouse maze. Like what is like a functional success rate of any clinical trial when they are helping people with low vision?
Exactly. Yeah. Like we can definitely speak to outcomes for that. And actually for RP, I know some it'd be nice to chat.
Yeah.
Kate, I love that comment. It's Macular Degeneration Month actually, which is good time to get our program started. But no, your comment is extremely insightful, and your research is actually very well timed. It's very timely. I can't tell you the number of patients who come to me and say, I fell. Is it because of my vision or is it because of something else?
Yeah.
And I almost always tell them that your vision is intimately correlated with balance and mobility. But we don't have a way of quantifying that. We don't. Like, I don't know if it's because they have an inner ear problem, because they've had a history of high blood pressure, because they're on a medication that they took at night.
Yeah.
It's because of their vision. There's all these interlocking mechanisms that are crucial to honestly protect them. Like, right, these we know that if you fracture your hip, your mortality risk at 6 months is extremely high. So, so I love this, but you are absolutely right that it is not the sexiest thing. As a medical advisor for multiple companies, well, I advise a diagnostic company for diabetes, And all they want is for us to figure out a way to diagnose macular degeneration, wet macular degeneration, so that they can treat it.
Yeah.
Because even diabetes isn't very sexy for them. They just want the things that are the highest therapeutic margins for them. So,
Yeah.
so, and so I actually think that you should look at sort of non-dilutive government funding. So I think they have some allocations that are specific for this type of work. So the NEI and NIH will have
Yeah.
some options for you.
Yeah.
I
Most
do
of the
think,
grants go to NEI. It's just
yeah,
that's
correct.
changing too.
Exactly. It's a different type of grants. You know, if you go to JP Morgan, you are never going to find someone who's going to fund this.
Yeah.
But if you, there are definitely, so Genentech, I know, has an arm that looks at the non-therapeutic space. You know, I'm working with them right now on access for uh, f- uh, basically diabetes research on folks who don't have access to medical care. So they have arms and allocations specific for this, and I'm happy to put you in touch with them. And all these kind of big, you know, you're working in AMD, so I'm sure Regeneron, Genentech, all these big companies will have something for you to help fund your work because it is extremely important for their own, you know, their own space.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let's connect offline
If,
and let's get you in touch. Yeah.
yeah. If I may plug, because you were mentioning, you know, like what we do. I'm glad that you are aware because a lot of clinicians are not aware of the mobility implications in people with AMD, and we actually have some recommendations of how to improve referrals.
I love that. I love it.
All right. Well, we are a little over the allotted time for this meeting, but I did not want to stop the conversation. It has been a wonderful discussion. We will share all of the information that was discussed this evening with everyone on the call. If you would like to get connected to each other, please feel free to let Chelsea or I know, and we're happy to make introductions via email so that you have information. And we are just delighted that everyone hopped on tonight. Thank you so much again to our founding member team. We look forward to our next See by the Bay meeting. Say that 5 times fast in May. So thanks everyone. Have a wonderful night and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Have a good night.